Now, coming on to the agenda. So, in today's session, what we're going to cover is all the organization units that we need to configure from a warehouse perspective in extended warehouse management. Then associate the different organizational units in ERP as well as in EWM. We will be checking the different configuration nodes as well. Also, the different settings that need to be done in terms of the communication, and also the integration setup as well. So when we talk about the EWM organizational structure, the ECC or the S4 organizational structure also becomes very much relevant, because the EWM organizational structure itself is there right from defining the warehouse number and going ahead from there. But we also need to ensure that the configuration is being performed in the ECC environment or the S4 environment as well. Now, as you can see in the slide over here, what it is showing is the linkages between how the different organizational units are mapped within each other. So you can see a company code having a couple of plans and one plan having a couple of storage locations. So as you guys can see, from a storage location perspective, within a plant, we are defining storage locations, and the warehouse number that you can see over here is the ECC warehouse number. So the ECC warehouse number is a 3-character warehouse number, as you can see. And whenever we are defining an EWM warehouse, so it is always a 4-character warehouse number. Okay. So in terms of whether are we going to define a company code, obviously we're not going to define a company code. Are we going to create the plan? We are not going to create a plan. Okay. In certain projects, I've seen that yes, storage locations might be created by the EWM consultants in the ECC side, but most of the cases it will be done by the procurement team or the MM team. Yeah. So as you can see over here, this particular slide talks about the assignment relations. So what it says is that a plant and storage location combination can be assigned to only one warehouse, whereas a warehouse can be assigned to multiple plants and storage location combinations, right? So simple example. Now, let's say I've got a I'm having a manufacturing, I'm a manufacturing organization, and I've got different distribution center warehouses across the country. So what I'll be doing is that when I'm manufacturing, so it will not be just one manufacturing plant, it can be multiple manufacturing plants, right? So there can be a manufacturing plant in Chennai, there can be a manufacturing plant in Gurgaon, or maybe one towards Kolkata. So the warehouses can be linked to these multiple plants, obviously, because those warehouses are distribution centers, and whatever goods are being manufactured across all these different regions will be pushed into this warehouse, into the distribution center. From there, it will be dispatched to the consumers or further, if it needs to be sent to any other location or a different warehouse, it can be done through that as well. So therefore, a warehouse can be assigned to multiple plants and storage location, but a plant and storage location combination is assigned to a warehouse only. Okay. Then single warehouses could be tied to multiple plants, even if the plants are assigned to multiple company codes. So yes, so generally, as we are aware, that company codes can be different varying on the nature of business in terms of geographies as well. So it depends on how the company does its financial layout in terms of the SAP setup. And then based on different taxation requirements as well. So a single warehouse can be linked to multiple plants from different company codes. So the system doesn't restrict you when you're doing that particular assignment. So in this particular diagram, you can see that again, it is showing a plant and then different storage locations within a plant, and then the assignment to the ECC warehouse and then the EWM warehouse. And as I had mentioned earlier, the EWM warehouse would be a 4-character warehouse number. Now, how does the naming convention go ahead? It depends on the organization. Again, certain organizations like to put it, suppose I've got a warehouse in Chennai, as I had mentioned, and I've got a warehouse in Kolkata. So maybe I want to mention CH01, say for example. So that is my Chennai warehouse. So if I've got a warehouse in Kolkata, so it is KL01. So it depends. There's no such restriction, limitation in terms of the naming nomenclature. Generally, It does what I have experienced so far in my little experience that I have. Mostly, the initial characters do resemble or do say talk about the location of the warehouse. Okay, and then you also, so what happens is that if you see the different storage locations over here, so there is one storage location which is for which is mentioned as ROD, and then there's one storage location which is maintained as AFS, and for prod, and then for finance, and then for IM. Now, generally from an EWM perspective, we do have separate storage locations when we are receiving the goods. The logic behind that is that once we receive the goods are not available for sale to the customer because it might need to go through different quality checks, and it might need to go through some extra packaging if required. And then finally, all those checks, all those extra packaging, some new labeling if required for a particular customer, say for example, all those things are done, only then it is available for sale. That means only that particular product can be sold to the customer. So later on, once we will proceed ahead in terms of the course curriculum, you will see how the storage location is linked in EWM. So because in EWM, we don't directly deal with storage locations, but yes, we do deal with a middleman known as availability group. Now, these are the prerequisites ECC configurations that are mentioned in terms of creation of company code. As I mentioned, these are things that are generally not done by EWM consultants. This will be done by the consultants responsible for their respective modules. So it will be company code again, generally is being done by the finance, FICO, and then plan can be done by FICO again, it can be done by MM. Then the assignment of the plan to company code again not being done by EWM, maintenance of storage location again, MM, creation of shipping points, assignment of shipping points to plan, creation of plan as customer, and creation of plan as vendor. Now, these two particular things, yes, that is something which is being required to be done from an EWM consultant's perspective when we are maintaining the business partner in S4 side. So in cases where the integration is not with S4 and it's a decentralized version with ECC and another version of EWM, in that case, you need to maintain it as a customer, and then it will migrate into EWM as a business partner. So over here, what it's talking about is defining the warehouse number first, and then the assignment of the warehouse number to the plant and storage location. So what we'll do in this case, we'll quickly jump to the SAP site inside the system and have a look as well in terms of how it looks and feels. Now, since most of you people who are new to EWM, yes, this is something that you guys will be seeing for the first time maybe, and people who have already been working in EWM, again, as I said, this might be something which is very basic, but please bear with it since it's the audience is a mixed audience. Okay. So we go to logistics general. Sorry, my bad. Logistics execution, and then definition of the warehouse number. So over here, you can see there is this warehouse which I had just created in terms of creation because I was just checking whether the connections and everything is working in this test server or not. So I created this test warehouse, ET1. In your case, if you want to create your own warehouse, and I would expect that you guys do that and practice that, you can copy it from this warehouse as well, or you can copy it from this warehouse as well, 171. Okay, EWM Cross Industries, you can use this warehouse also as a reference warehouse number. Okay, so this is nothing where I'm just defining the ECC warehouse number. So as I said, the other objects that were being shown in the presentation, like storage location and all those things. So that is something which is generally created by the MM team. But since most of you have got experience in MM, there's no harm in creating a storage location over here. So whenever you guys are practicing, either you copy an existing plan, you know how to do it. So while going to define in logistics general, just take the plant and copy the plan, and you create new storage locations. Okay, so what I did was, in my case, I did not create a new plant. I just, sorry, my bad, 1710 is the plant. And I just created two new storage locations available for sale and ROD, receiving on dock. So these are the two storage locations which I have generated. These are the pre-existing ones already, because as I mentioned, I have not created a new plan. But I would suggest if you guys want to do it, you can just copy this plan and create your own plan as well. And then you can map your own storage locations as well. So once the you're aware that the plant storage location is in place, the warehouse number has been defined, the ECC warehouse number. The next thing that we need to do is in terms of the assignment. Now, when we go towards assignment, so again, we go to logistics execution, and over here, assignment of warehouse number to plant in storage location. So over here, you can see there are multiple entries. And for my storage location and warehouse number, I have done this combination. Okay. So I have created these two storage locations, EWM1 and ROD, and I have mapped it to my ECC warehouse number, ET1. Now, once I'm done with this definition and assignment, so a very important configuration is the assignment of the ECC warehouse number to the EWM warehouse number. Now, this is something which needs to be performed. So we will just scroll down where exactly it is. We'll get to see that as well. So you can see over here, there is this configuration node, assignment of warehouse number to EWM warehouse number. Now you can see for my warehouse ET1, the EWM warehouse number which I have defined is ET01. Now, this particular configuration generally, if, since you guys are already experienced in working in SAP, so you guys are aware that there is a check which happens whenever you're trying to configure something, right? So say for example, if you're creating a storage location and you enter a plant number, if that plant number does not exist, then what happens is that the system will show you an error stating the table name and telling you that this plant does not exist in this particular table, right? But in this configuration, the system doesn't call an RFC and check the EWM system. Now, you guys, now the version on which I'm showing you, this is an embedded version. Okay, this is not a decentralized version of EWM. This is an embedded version. Now, in the embedded version, it's just one single box, but still, we still define EWM as a separate logical system. Now, as we progress ahead in today's curriculum as well, you will understand that how the master data is flowing between EWM and ECC or S4, and how the transactional data flows. Okay. So there are RFC checks which happens, but in this case, even if I have not defined the warehouse number, the system is not going to do an RFC call and check whether this particular 4-character warehouse number exists in EWM or not. Right. So, so that means it's an independent activity. Even if you have not started your EWM configuration, you can still push in your warehouse number. Okay, but make sure that you pushed in the same warehouse number which you guys are going to use in EWM as well. So apart from that, another important thing is the configuration of the EWM specific parameters. Now, if I go inside, now this is something, so whenever you're defining a warehouse, the system doesn't understand whether this warehouse is an EWM warehouse or not. Now, this is for the data which is being created in ECC or S4. This data flows into EWM. So we will be going through that as well. And what is generally the flow? We'll go through that as well. Now, for this data to flow, which is being created, say for example, from an inbound scenario perspective, a purchase order gets created in ECC or S4. Against the purchase order, you create an inbound delivery. And from once the inbound delivery is created, this delivery gets replicated to EWM. Now, whether this delivery gets replicated to EWM or not is based on a couple of settings, okay, or configurations. Now, this configuration setup is over here, as you can see, is something where we are defining the warehouse as an EWM warehouse. Because when I define the warehouse, the system understands that as a local WM warehouse. This entry automatically will come in over here in this configuration. The moment you define a warehouse, automatically the entry would look something like this, which you can see over here on your screen. It will be coming up as local WM. So what we need to do, if we are configuring an EWM warehouse, we need to select this drop-down button over here and then we need to select Extended Warehouse Management. I mean, generally, if you see in projects, 100 is being used for golden clients, right? Where we are doing the configuration. Generally, in the if you talk about development system, then the development system 100 will generally be the golden client. But then as you progress ahead, and it depends on organization to organization how many different layers you have before it reaches production. So if you have got a development server, and then you have got a quality server, then you have got a different server, say for example for UAT, I've seen projects where they don't have different servers for UAT, they are doing it in the same quality server. And then it depends on your setup. I like how many boxes you have defined in the system, on your licenses and all those things. So it's not generic, this 100 client, but what I have observed is yes, the golden clients generally where we are doing configuration will be client 100. So you can see over here, are you following my cursor? So you can see over here the plant and the storage location. The plant is 1710 and the storage location is EWM1. These two combinations were assigned to this particular warehouse, right? ET1.
Yeah.
So the system automatically determines this warehouse number. Once it determines this warehouse number, then I will now show you after this, after we discuss, after we are done with this configuration, I'll show you what is called a distribution model, based on which the system actually sends the delivery or replicates the delivery into EWM. From a transactional perspective, it is we still have to create from a system setup perspective. Inside that box, there are still two logical systems which are created.
Okay.
So the transaction for the transaction data to flow, it still calls RFCs. So as you can see, this is one important configuration that we need to ensure that this is, since this is a ECC warehouse, so it will be you need to select it as an EWM warehouse. Now this distribution model, if you can see over here, so this is something generally, it depends again on clients. There are certain clients, from my experience, I've seen they've used top distribution as well. And if you select this option, distribution immediately, so the moment the document is generated and saved, the document will immediately replicate the queue. The queue will be generated. The RFC queue will be generated to send the information or to create the delivery into EWM. The moment you set it up as distribute immediately. But if you put a stop distribution, so what you can do, you can put in conditions. If you use stop distribution, you can put in conditions, or there are a certain bodies also provided by SAP where you can define your own conditions within that body, that only when this particular thing happens, the delivery should be distributed. Say, for example, from an outbound scenario perspective, I'm giving you an example. In one of my projects, the delivery was only distributed once the shipment, which is assigned to the delivery, is checked in. So once the truck arrives, so generally the shipment is associated with trucks, right? So say for example, the truck has arrived at the location, and then the truck, after all the checks are being done for the truck and the driver, the truck is checked in. So the moment the shipment is checked in, only then the distribution happens. So in those cases, what I'll do, I'll use stop distribution and write my own conditions in the body. Okay. But again, I've also seen projects where they have used this distribution immediately as well. So once we are done with that, so there are other checkpoints as well. So what I expect you guys to do is, in tomorrow's session, I'm going to check with you guys whether you guys have gone through this or not. So there are certain settings over here related to batch determination for EWM, related to goods receipt for EWM. Then again, this communication methodology basically is how you want to, the transactional communication to happen between ECC as well as with EWM. Okay, so it will be queued and serialized asynchronous. So the communication methodology that is being used from a transactional data perspective. So why I'm emphasizing on transactional data, because for the master data, the mode of communication that will be used for the replication between ECC to EWM and again from EWM to ECC is not RFCs for master data. But yes, for transactional data like outbound deliveries, inbound deliveries, and production orders, it will be generated through queues. So in short form, we call it queues, but these are basically queued RFCs. Okay, so queued remote function call. So what we mean by queue is basically when I'm creating the delivery and saving it. That is one queue which gets generated. Now, an inbound delivery, say for example. Now, once I do the goods receipt against that inbound delivery, there will be a queue which will be generated to update this delivery back into ECC from EWM. So that is the number one queue. The next queue that will happen is if I'm doing the put away as well. So once I do the goods receipt, that is one step. And after I do the goods receipt, say for example, I'm directly doing the put away. In that case, that is the second step. That means the system will generate two queues, one for goods receipt and the other one for put away. Any changes in the delivery I make, I can do that in EWM as well in terms of quantity and other things. So that thing also, once I make the changes in EWM, the delivery changes will flow back into ECC again through queued RFCs. Okay. So once I show you guys the screen, people who have not seen it in EWM will understand like what I'm talking about. Okay. So, but the mode of communication is queued and serialized asynchronous communication. Okay. Now, apart from that, one thing also in all of these checkbox that I've asked you to check is delivery change. Now, this is something which was earlier not there. Once you create a delivery, it gets replicated to EWM. Then you cannot make any further changes in the ECC delivery unless and until you change the distribution status. Okay, so what happens is that within a delivery, so there is a distribution status, so which is at the header level. So you can see over here in my screen if you guys are following. So this is the distribution status which says it is distributed. So earlier, what used to happen that the system, the ECC system does not allow you if the delivery is in a distributed status. So then from a troubleshooting perspective, what we need to do, we need to reset the delivery status and then make the changes in ECC delivery. Suppose we are trying to align certain things between ECC and EWM. So, but now with this, with the S4 HANA versions, so you get this delivery change option over here as well. Okay. So the rest I will leave it up to you. You guys can have a look into it. I have gone through the important part over here. So I will quickly do a quick check tomorrow. Take it as an assessment or whatever. So I will just do a quick check with you guys tomorrow regarding these other checks that are there. Now, once you configure the EWM specific parameters, the most important thing is that now after doing all these settings as well, the delivery, if I create the inbound delivery, it is not going to go into the EWM system. Okay. So what I mean by the EWM system is for EWM, the inbound delivery transactions are completely different, right? So if I suppose create a delivery after doing all these configurations and I don't do that last bit of configuration, the system is not still going to push the delivery into the EWM logical system. Now let us have a look into that particular setup. Okay. So what I will do is I will directly use a transaction code. So this transaction code is actually not mentioned in the slide. So if you guys want to note it down, it's up to you. You can note it down as well. So this is a shortcut basically. You can go through the config node as well, but I prefer using this transaction. So I'll directly reach over here. Okay. So the transaction is /SPE/OL19. Okay. And there is a configuration node as well in EWM, which you guys can go through for to reach the same screen over here. Okay. Now the screen that you can see over here, we need to enter our ECC warehouse number. Now the logical system of SAP EWM. Now this logical system is the EWM system number which you need to provide, not the S4 or the ECC system. It's the logical system of SAP EWM. Okay. So let me quickly show you. We go to SC16. You can note it down, this table name, because this is also not provided in the curriculum. So this is the distribution model table TPD06. Okay, and object value, I will push in my warehouse number since I've already generated the distribution model. Okay, so over here, this is how the model, this is the database table for this distribution model that we are going to, the transaction that we were seeing earlier. So the moment we create it, this is the table where it comes and hits. So over here, you can see this is the sender system. Okay. So this is the sender system logical system. So this is the S4H CLNP 100 is the logical system defined for the S4 environment or the ECC environment. Okay. And the receiver system, you see the difference. It is S4H EWM 100. Okay. So whenever we are generating, now when you guys are practicing, you guys need to push in this particular, the EWM logical system over here. As for H, EWM 100. Okay. And then the distribution model view, you need to select EWM. So this model has already been generated. This distribution model has already been generated. So over here, there are different objects: inbound delivery, outbound delivery, production material request. So these, as I mentioned, these are the three things generally which is flowing from a transactional data perspective from S4 or ECC to the EWM system. So inbound delivery, you guys are all aware. Outbound delivery, you guys are all aware. Now the production material request is basically the process order or the manufacturing order or the production order going in. Once it hits EWM, it is known as production material request. So when we are going to cover that topic, I'm going to talk a bit more about this particular document and how it helps us in doing the staging to the production supply areas in a manufacturing scenario where they have got a manufacturing plant. Okay. Now, you generally, when we are setting it up for our warehouse, we are going to select all the objects. We're not going to do it one by one. Okay, so we're going to select the radio button for all and then click on create entries. So after that, what we're going to do, we're going to execute it. Now, for this particular warehouse, I've already created the distribution. I've not created, I've generated the distribution model for this particular warehouse. So what I'll do, I'll click on check entries over here and see whether everything is correct for this warehouse or not. When we say this, so what exactly happens in the backend, or what are the objects which are responsible for this? So let's quickly go and check that. Okay. So to check that again, this transaction, please note it down. It is BD64. So people who are already working in EWM, you guys will be aware about all these things. Again, I know it's very repetitive. Extremely sorry for that. But for people who are new to EWM, so please make sure that you guys are noting down these transactions as well. Okay. So you can see over here. So I've used this EWM logical system S4H EWM 100. So within this, you can see these are the different BAPIs. Now, what are BAPIs? The BAPIs are basically preset programming interfaces for which are defined for the ECC delivery. Once it is saved, the structures are predefined and it will push and create the queue for the EWM environment. Okay, so you can see there is one BAPI for delivery change, one is for quantity reduction, one is for saving the delivery, the other one is for inbound delivery change, then inbound delivery saving, and then we have got one for the manufacturing side or the production side. Okay, so these BAPIs are basically responsible. So these are preset BAPIs. You guys don't have to create it. These BAPIs are standard BAPIs. You just need to do the assignment. Okay. So once, if it's a new system, brand new system, like an empty box, this is a one-time activity in terms of setting up it over here in this transaction. Remember that. Okay. Unless and until you guys have got different logical systems, like I've also seen this in one of my projects where the projects are too huge and then geographically, and therefore what they have done is that they have defined different logical systems as sending and receiving systems as well. And what happens at the end of the day, that you will be having different distribution models for that, right? But the objects over here that you can see, it's going to be the same. Okay, so you just need to click on this button over here that you see, the display and edit button. So it goes into the edit mode. So right now the screen that you guys were seeing was the display mode. So once we are here in the edit mode now, and from here you can start creating your model. So the model is nothing but the model name over here that you see. The way EWM has been mentioned, you can keep it as your keep it like that, EWM test 1, test 2, whatever, and you can give in your own technical name as well. But again, this is something which is, as I mentioned, this is supposed to be done only when you're doing a brand new implementation. If you guys if you guys are doing a rollout project, then in that case, the distribution models will already be set. So you guys don't have to do this step. Okay. So once you create the model, then you start adding the BAPIs. Okay. So the BAPIs are nothing but the same. So you just push in your model number. The sending client will be the ECC or the S4 client, the logical system, then the receiving client will be the EWM client, and then you add the object over here and the method. That's it. So that is for the object and the method. Again, is something. What are the objects and the methods? These are the objects and the methods. Now, as you saw that we have used that transaction earlier to generate the distribution model. This is creation of the distribution model. And then what we saw in that transaction was generating the distribution model for our warehouse number. So whenever you guys are doing the test in this environment, you guys will be generating it. Or if you want to create your own distribution model, it's up to you. Okay, there's nothing stopping you from doing that as well. Okay, so over here, if you can see, now this is one of the distribution models, and over here you can see the BAPI. So within the BAPI, there are these filters. So what does this filter contain? It contains the warehouse number. So you can see our warehouse number ET1 and 171 are present in this filter group. So the same thing that this is something once you guys create your own ECC warehouse and you generate it for this particular distribution model. So your warehouse number will also come in all the filter groups of these different BAPIs. Okay. Now, based on this BAPI only, this is the, as I mentioned, this is the most important setup. The system generates the queue. Okay, and the queue for inbound delivery. You can see there are for different things, the different BAPIs are there. For outbound delivery, the moment you create outbound delivery, this is the BAPI which is used, save replica. For inbound delivery, this is the BAPI which is being used. And the communication flows vice versa. Because from an inbound scenario perspective, once the inbound delivery is created, it gets distributed to EWM. All the execution activities against inbound delivery is going to be performed in EWM, not in ECC or S4. Like the goods receipt, the unloading, then any checks, any quality checks, everything is going to be performed in EWM. And then the final put away as well. So once that is being done, the information will flow back into ECC and it will update the delivery in ECC. So in ECC side, nobody is going to work on the delivery. The delivery execution part for inbound or for outbound is going to happen in EWM. So generally what happens is that when we are defining all these logical systems, yes, it is something that the functional consultant should be aware of. But let me tell you this, that in most of the cases, these activities are not done by the EWM consultants, functional consultants, because basis, so there is, as you guys are aware, there are roles which will be assigned to a particular consultant. Now, basis will be restricting certain things which we will not have access to. Okay. So naming the logical system is different. So this is something which we might have access to as well. I've seen projects where they have allowed the functional consultants to do it, and I've seen projects where the base system is performing this, even the definition of the logical systems. So you can see over here. So this is one of the this is the one which has been defined S4H CLNT 100, which is the client for S4 HANA, and this is the one for EWM S4H EWM 100. Right. So once you define the logical system, then you assign the logical system to a client. Now, this is again something, this transaction specially, basis generally does not give access to functional consultants because this is SCC1. So if we have access to this client, basically, I can also, this particular transaction is SCC1. So using this transaction, actually, I can control whether whenever I'm making changes. So if you guys have, since you guys have got so much experience, you are aware of about open client. So I can control it through using this transaction itself. In the client, I will just, if I put this radio button to changes without automatic recording, the client opens up. And then what happens is that it doesn't ask for a transport request whenever I'm making any configuration changes. It doesn't ask for any transport request. So there's no recording of the changes that are happening. Okay. So over here, it's not like that. So if you, when you guys are practicing, kindly don't change this setup as well in the server. Okay. So this is something generally we are not doing, but again, this is a step which is mentioned over here, so you guys can go through it. Okay. Then specify SAP APO release. So this is something again which is so this is basically system APO release information. which is not supposed to be done by us, but again done by the basis team. But again, this is a configuration which is there, which you guys should be aware about. Okay. And then comes and this is something which you don't have to do which you don't have to check for every warehouse. This is just a one-time activity, the system setup activity that needs to be performed. Setting up of RFC destination. So this is again something which is generally not done by functional consultants. Okay. So within ABAP connection, you can see if you go over here. So, I mean, all the setup will be done, the logon security and everything will be mapped over here. And then after this is being done, you can do a connections test as well. Okay, so to check whether the pinging is working or not correctly, and the connection test is successful, as you can see over here. But then again, this, as I mentioned, even this particular access generally will not be provided because the setup and everything will be again done by the basis team. Okay, but yes, you need to mention that this is something which needs to be done, because certain basis teams, they will not be aware that this setup needs to be done. So what they will say that you please let us know what is the setup that needs to be done, and then accordingly they will do that setup. Then in terms of target system and queue type, you can see over here. So this is the logical system, and if you see the option over here, so the transactional events are active. So this is the option, and this is the option which is generally needed to be selected when you are using this part of the configuration. And over here as well, so the queue type, so I stands for inbound queues. Now, when you're working in a decentralized environment, you would see even for outbound queues as well, the setup. But since this is an embedded system, so the queue that is being set is for an inbound queue only. Okay, so later once I start showing you transactions, the transaction flows, then you will understand this whole queue thing for people who have not worked on queues. Now, once this is done, this is again this particular setup that you guys can see over here. This is something which needs to be done on the ECC side. This is not again an EWM configuration. This is an EWM configuration within the ECC side. Okay, so to go into this, you need to go into integration with other SAP components. I'm repeating this. And within integration with other SAP components, you need to select Extended Warehouse Management. And within Extended Warehouse Management, basic settings for setting up the system landscape. Now, once we are done with all these things, let us move into SCM Extended Warehouse Management. That means EWM. Now, this is from where the EWM configuration is going to start. So the first one is very simple. So you can see the EWM processes are being classified over here in separate nodes, parent nodes you can see. So there is one node for master data, one for goods receipt process, goods issue process, internal warehouse processes, cross-process settings, material flow system, labor management, billing, dock and appointment scheduling, monitoring interfaces, mobile data entry, and then business add-ins. Okay, so each parent node, if you open up, has got its own sub nodes over here, and as we cover each and every process, inbound, outbound, you will see that we are jumping into each and every node that is being specified over here. Okay. So within master data, we'll start off with defining the warehouse number. Now, which warehouse number? The EWM warehouse number, not the ECC warehouse number. The ECC warehouse number we've already defined. So this is the EWM warehouse number, ET01, and this is the description of the warehouse number. Okay. So you guys, whenever you guys are doing the testing, please make sure that you guys create your own warehouse number, and you can push it as maybe since you guys like say for example Praveen warehouse 1 or something like that. You can use your nomenclature, easier to identify, right? Because so many people will be creating it. So once the warehouse number is defined in EWM, and always remember it's a 4-character warehouse number, not the 3-character one like the one which we have defined in ECC or S4. Okay. Moving ahead, it's going to be the assignment of the warehouse number. Now, coming to the assignment of the warehouse number, so let us go into ET01. What you can see over here, this is the supply chain unit which I'm assigning, and then I've got the party entitled to dispose and the owner. What exactly is this supply chain unit? So the supply chain unit is something which is an APO object, number one. So you guys must be aware that there is a SAP module, which is APO, and EWM actually comes out from this APO box itself. So the supply chain unit is an APO object which is assigned whenever a particular each and every document that is being generated in EWM, the supply chain unit gets assigned to it. Now, this supply chain unit also defines that the warehouse performs what kind of activities, because every warehouse is different, right? Every warehouse will not be having all kinds of functionalities, physical functionalities within the warehouse. Okay, so you need to define those physical business attributes which are performed within the warehouse, and that is something which you define not at the warehouse level but at the supply chain unit level. And this supply chain unit in turn needs to be assigned over here in this configuration. So to go and maintain, so before you assign it, obviously you need to maintain the supply chain unit. Maintenance, sorry, my bad. Maintenance of the supply chain unit is not a configuration, it is a master data. It is a part of the EWM master data which needs to be maintained during the initial setup of your warehouse. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll use the transaction. So I will just push in the transaction over here as well. So for the supply chain unit that we had created, so this is SCU ET01 for the ET01 warehouse. And when you're creating a supply chain unit, you would see that the first thing that comes in over here is the type. Now, what does this type signify? Okay, so let's do an F4 and see what options does it have. So 1001 says it's a production plant. 1002 is a distribution center. Now my warehouse can just be a distribution center as well, right? As I had given an example very early in the session today, that there might be cases where the warehouses are just purely distribution centers. There is no manufacturing plant attached to it. So in that case, I can select it as 1002 as well. Then supply chain units can be shipping points as well. Whenever we have got shipping points, which we are using in EWM, say for example, once we are discussing that topic, I will be discussing it more in detail. A supply chain unit gets created for the shipping point as well. Okay. And then from a warehouse perspective, you have 1008, which is purely just a warehouse. And the system doesn't stop you if you select 1008 also, and still there are production activities which are happening in that warehouse. The system does not stop you from that. I will show you once we are discussing the business attributes which we define within the supply chain unit. Okay. And then you have for customer, for vendor, all these things as well. You've got supply chain units which get generated. Let's see for our supply chain unit what has been maintained. For our supply chain unit, it is maintained as 1008, which is a warehouse. And over here in the generic data, in the general data tab, you can see you've got the geographical data in terms of longitude and latitude. And then over here in the address section, you've got you can maintain whatever you want to maintain over here. So whatever country or region is being maintained over here, so that is going to be considered in terms of the timing as well for the warehouse, right? So all the activity, all the timings will be considered based on that. And over here in the alternative section is where we assign the business attributes. So you can see all the descriptions of these different business attributes over here. So INV stands for warehouse. So make sure whenever you are creating a supply chain unit, at least INV is being added as a business attribute. So if you don't add INV as a business attribute, the inbound delivery which gets created from ECC will come and get stuck over here. It will not create the inbound delivery in EWM. Okay. Then you've got receiving office, then you've got shipping office, ship from location, stock location, and ship to location. So these are the different attributes, and the description is, I think, self-explanatory for everyone. So these are basically business functionalities which are being performed in this supply chain unit. And this supply chain unit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign it to the warehouse number. Okay. So once we are done with this assignment, we are not going to go inside warehouse number control over here today. So what we'll do is we will go to see what are the different number ranges. So obviously there are different documents which are going to get generated from a EWM perspective, like inbound deliveries, outbound deliveries, warehouse orders. So there are two types of number ranges. One which is at the global level. Now these number ranges are something which will not be changing if you are creating new warehouses. Say, for example, inbound delivery number range, outbound delivery number, document number ranges. These are not going to change. It is irrespective. It is not, there is no sub-object of a warehouse number within this particular number range. Okay. So now, if you guys are working on a rollout project, say, for example, that already an implementation has been done, and you guys want to see, like, I want to check what are the number range objects that I need to maintain for the new rollout warehouse, say, for example. So I'll show you a shortcut. Again, I'm sure everyone is aware about this table, but I'll mention it over here in the chat box as well. So what you need to do, you need to go to NRIV, okay? And in the sub-object value, now I have not generated the number range objects against the warehouse number for ET01. So what I will do, I will just push in 1710 and then just execute and see. Okay, so what has happened is, if you see over here, since this is an embedded system, now this particular shortcut which I showed you will not work in embedded system if you just use the warehouse number and if the plant number and the warehouse number is same. So in this particular example, the plant number is also 1710 and the EWM warehouse number is also 1710. So what has happened is that because NRIV is a standard number range object table, right? And this is an embedded system. So it is also bringing not only the EWM number range objects respective to warehouse, it's also bringing all the ECC number range or the S4 number range objects as well, FI number range, everything. So to further filter this out, what we need to do in this case, so what we will do is we will maintain, because all the generic EWM number range objects which require a warehouse number as well, a sub-object value is there in terms of a warehouse. It starts with /SCWM/. Okay, so I'm just putting this in the query in the object name. And if you execute this, you will get all the EWM relevant number range objects. Okay. So you can see all these number range objects: SCWM, DSGR, HUID, PIDO, SCWM, WAVE, WHO, WRKL. These are the EWM number range objects that need to be maintained. Okay, in the slides over here that we have, all these details are also being provided, but I'm just showing you guys a shortcut. If you guys are in a rollout project, say, for example. Yeah, so this is a very easy way to identify the number range objects. It's actually, so in the S4 environment earlier, so what used to happen in the decentralized environment, and I think we've got one person who has worked in EWM 9.5. So you would see the document number in EWM is different. The inbound delivery number, suppose it starts with 1800001515, say, for example. But the inbound delivery number in EWM will be different. It will be a 4 series number, 4-1 or a 2 series, or however you have set it up. But if from an S4 perspective, this whole concept changes. And especially when you come to the embedded environment, because what happens in terms of a document flow, from inbound delivery perspective only. So the moment the inbound delivery is created, there is an inbound delivery notification which first gets generated in EWM. And then once that inbound delivery notification gets activated, then the inbound delivery gets created in EWM. The inbound delivery notification is the same document number as the ECC document number, is different in a decentralized version. But when we talk about embedded S4 versions, then the document number remains the same because we take out the inbound delivery notification part. Okay, so there's no inbound delivery notification. So the ECC document number is your inbound delivery document number. So let me quickly show you an inbound delivery. So you can see over here. So generally in this screen, there is no option of inbound delivery notification, right? So but over here, if you can see, there's just one icon of inbound delivery. But if you see someone, I don't remember exactly who, was it Atul, I think, who has worked in the 9.5 version. So if on the version that you are working on, if you see, there will be one more tab over here which says inbound delivery notification. So the notification number generally is the same number, but in S4 embedded, this number remains the same as in the ECC document number. Okay, so when I say GUI, graphical user interface, I'm talking about this in a transactional mode, because we also have Fiori applications for the same, right? So the transaction is this one. So let me push it down for you guys. Anyways, we're going to cover this during the inbound part as well. Since we have maintained our supply chain unit, assigned it to the warehouse number ET01 in that configuration, and the supply chain unit was also as a receiving office. The business attribute was mentioned. So therefore, GR office is being taken as the supply chain unit over here. For cases where the document number is different, what we need to do, we need to select on the drop down option over here, select logistics execution delivery, and you need to push in your ECC delivery document number and execute. You will get the document number over here. Okay. And from here, if you want to again check the reference documents, you can check from here. Now, this delivery I have created as a direct delivery through 561 movement type using MyGo. So therefore, there is no parent document for this delivery. But if there is a parent document, there is a further sub node over here. So you need to go to the item tab. You just scroll down over here, and then you click on reference documents again over here. And then apart from this ECC delivery number, the ERP delivery number, you will also have one more node which will have the purchase order number, if there is a purchase order number, or if it is created against a manufacturing order, that will also show up over here. So these number ranges, as I mentioned, some of the number ranges that we can see over here are warehouse specific. So to find out the warehouse specific number ranges, what we need to do, we just need to enter the warehouse number, the sub-object value over here, and then the object name slash SCWM slash star, and then you just run the query, and then you get over here the results. So when I say warehouse specific, what happens is that when you go to maintain the number range, so over here you can see it is asking for warehouse number. That means this is something which changes for every warehouse. Now all the number ranges which are warehouse specific, those number ranges you need to create every time you create a new warehouse. Every time you create a new warehouse. Then, as I said, the number ranges which are not warehouse specific, which are generic, those number ranges are just one-time creation. The first time when the empty box is being set up for EWM, only at that time, like document type number ranges and all those things, those are all generic number ranges, which is only one-time creation. All the warehouse specific number ranges are every time creation. In some of the projects I have seen, most of the projects, it is taken as done as a master data maintenance object, and it is something which is done as a part of cutover activity as well during go live. But there are certain projects I've seen as well where they do it as a part of configuration. But those transport requests related to the number ranges, you need to be very, very careful about it if you're capturing it in a transport request. We'll move ahead from this topic. Let me see what else needs to be covered, which is so number ranges client level. So the whatever are mentioned over here at the client level, this is something which is generic. This is not warehouse specific. Okay. So to identify this, what you need to do is you need to go into this particular configuration. SCM Extended Warehouse Management, cross-process settings. And over here, sorry, my bad. Where did Mr. Warehouse request go to? Okay, so warehouse request, number ranges, yes. So these are the generic number ranges. Okay, so if I execute one of them, let's say for example, you will see there is no sub object of warehouse number over here. So it is not maintained against warehouse numbers. So it's a generic. It's going to be default for all warehouses. Then you've got the ones which are mentioned over here. These are the number ranges which are required to be maintained when you're maintaining from a warehouse number perspective. So if I go back, go to master data, and over here define number ranges, and then you will have all these nodes over here. So let me quickly have a look if I have anything. Yes. So from an integration perspective, apart from creation of these two things, another important thing that needs to be created now on the EWM side is the plant and storage location combination assignment against the EWM warehouse number. So for that, what we need to do, we need to go into master data, sorry, my bad, not master data, extended warehouse management interfaces, and then ERP integration, goods movement, map storage locations from ERP system to EWM. So if we execute this, so what we are going to see is for these two storage locations, if you see, I have maintained these are the two new storage locations which I had created for this plan 1710. and I have mapped this combination 1710 and the storage location to the EWM warehouse number. And if you see over here, there is something called the availability group. Now, what is exactly is this availability group? We will be discussing it in more details when we are going to cover the goods receipt process or the inbound process, because we need to understand stock types and all those things. And basically, just at a very high level for you guys to understand, this availability group is the middleman which helps the system to understand between a stock type, which is there only in EWM, and the storage location, which is only there from an ECC perspective. Because nowhere, whenever you guys are performing the transactions in EWM, you're going to see the storage location. You're only going to see stock type. And there's no direct relation between storage location and stock type. So the middleman between storage location and stock type is Mr. Availability Group. Okay, so we'll discuss more about this in details when we are doing the goods receipt process. Okay. Now, apart from that, from a delivery processing perspective as well, you need to, like, this is again something, this mapping of storage locations from ERP system to EWM is every time activity you guys are creating a new warehouse. This needs to be performed every time you're creating a new warehouse. Okay. And one more important thing that I forgot to mention over here, you can see the party entitled to dispose over here, which is coming up. So this basically comes up from that configuration which we have done for the warehouse number assignment to the supply chain unit and the party entitled to dispose. So this party entitled to dispose that you see BP1710 is nothing but the business partner and for the plant. So basically this particular business partner, what it means is that is entitled to dispatch and dispose of the stock as well. So this needs to be, this automatically is coming over here against the configuration that we have done over there. So that it automatically comes up over here. Where the warehouse is linked to multiple party entitled to dispose is, then that configuration doesn't allow you to maintain multiple. So what we do, we keep it blank then in that case. There can be multiple plans a warehouse is linked to. So in that case, I will not be maintaining any party entitled to dispose in that particular configuration for the warehouse number assignment. Okay. Again, this is something, the mapping of the storage locations from ERP system to EWM is an activity which needs to be performed for every time a new warehouse is getting created. Now, mapping of document types from ERP system to EWM. This is something which is not supposed to be done every time you create a new warehouse. This is a one-time activity. Fresh system, empty system, this is the thing that you're going to perform. Okay, based on all the different document types which are there for inbound, for outbound, we'll be maintaining it over here. Similarly, for item types as well, the mapping needs to be done. Then apart from that, right now, from a system setup perspective, basic setup perspective, organizational unit perspective, this is covered. Let me see if okay, yeah. So when we were talking about the logical system definition, we have seen where it is being defined and all those things. There is also something called as business system, which needs to be defined in EWM. Okay, so if you can find it in the general settings, then this is the business system. And this is an object which will be later on assigned to the warehouse number as well. And this is something which is required to be done. Okay, so once the business system is being defined, you can see over here, it is being mapped to the logical system as well. Okay? So the business system which is defined, it is mapped to the logical system. Now, this is in case of embedded system, you will just find one business system assigned to a logical system. But in case of decentralized system, you will have one more business system which is assigned to the ECC logical system as well. This is the table. Let's just execute this. If you need to find out what are the business systems and the logical system and the configuration that we saw, so that configuration database table is just this one. So this is the logical system and this is the business system which has been mapped against it. Now, from an EWM perspective as well, we need to define the logical system. So for defining the logical system, what we need to do, we need to go to Extended Warehouse Management, SCM basis. So as I told you, these activities are generally being performed by SCM basis. Yeah, so the business system basically is something which you need to define. So it is whether you are using a S4 environment, whether you are using a decentralized environment, you still have to create your business system. There's no such thing as that you don't have to create a business system. And then after once you create the business system needs to be assigned to the logical system which has been generated. So you'll see over here the logical system which it is mapped to is the S4H CLMP 100. That is the ECC logical system.